that is so good for you that it may not be good for everybody else. but so I mean, but I really think it goes back to that thing where like will you be quiet? And you hear that 2 or 3 times, and you think something's wrong, and you may or may not get over it. It's kind of sad.
Does it influence you when you're in there that you want to do any of that in your music? Bring some of the Irish traditional or Irish?
Oh yeah, I do. I've got a couple of Irish tunes that I do, and depending on the time of year and how many drinks I've
had. It's coming up soon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. St. Patrick's Day. Yeah. Although in Ireland, I mean St. Patrick's Day usually it was just like you go to mass and have a couple, a pint on the way home. But it was, and now it's Americans have taken it over to and they have these huge parades and stuff by people who come from elsewhere, and but it's it's a great tradition. I mean to celebrate being because we did our 23andMe thing, everybody in the family, and guess what?
Irish.
Yeah. And some Scandinavian, because the Vikings. I mean, doesn't yeah, right, exactly. That's and of course my maternal grandfather was from Alsace. And so there's this little, French and German that's in there, but I'm Irish. I'm proud of it.
Questions?
If it takes 3 men, 5 hours.
Okay, go ahead.
Were you ever going to do a Christmas album?
We've talked about it, and so you have to record those in July. And so I've been talking to Steve Dawson. We want to do something. We're working on maybe 2 different albums, but we have talked about doing a Christmas album. I may or may not. I mean, there's so many of them, but there's a lot of great Christmas blues, that people, some really good material to use. So we'll see what happens.
Your Christmas album?
What's that?
I know you said there's a lot of great British Christmas songs, and yes, there are.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen it, so what would be on your?
Oh well, of course, Charles Brown, Come Home for Christmas, and Christmas Tears, Freddie King, and there's loads and loads of them. Just on and on.
No White Christmas?
Yeah, sure, why not? All the great Christmas songs, popular Christmas songs, were all written by Jews.
Yeah.
It's true,
They had no pressure.
Right, yeah, but Irving Berlin wrote that, and then and Chestnuts, Mel Torme, and just on what's the one, City Side, Silver Bells.
Yes.
Jay Livingston, whose name was not Livingston, but yeah, I mean it's funny that all those Christmas, those iconic Christmas tunes were all written by Jewish people, which is good for them. I mean they sort of invented Christmas with like. They own Macy's, and Gimbel's department stores and stuff. That's it. And then on, my friend Sam Feldman, what are you doing? I'm having Chinese food.
Any filming projects coming up?
What's that?
Any filming projects?
I've done a couple of. Been doing a bunch of voiceover work, but I'm kind of picking and choosing. I've had a few auditions recently, and because my legs, my prosthesis current when I'm fitting are not fitting me well, so that's why I'm riding around in this and not walking as much as I have. And I know I lost a couple because walked across the room and it makes these guys nervous. And then like Vancouver now, they filmed all these Hallmark movies there, right? And I get calls for those, and I really don't want to do something that I would not watch. No, having been on Highlander and having been on, Wise Guy, really good shows with great writing and great, and and I've done, I've done a couple of Hallmark movies, but I get all these calls all the time. Oh, we want you there, and I really don't want to do stuff that, I only want to work on something that means something to me anymore. I'm at that point, and I don't have to, not to say I don't need the money, but my wife is great, and we've accumulated, and I never went into my retirement savings to do anything, and we, vacations, we would go for 3 days to Seattle or and we saved a lot of money, and now that I'm sort of retired, we got, and I really don't need to do. I don't need to pay my rent. Like, and I still know so many guys, you know, actors and same, you know, who like they'll do anything because you got to put food on the table, you know. And it's so I've been lucky that way.
Yeah, you just mentioned that you didn't want to be in movies that you really didn't want to watch.
I've been in some.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Highlander: The Source. That is widely regarded as the worst Highlander movie ever, and one of the biggest knocks on it for me was that they killed you in that movie. How did you feel when you saw that script? I mean, did it make you want to be like, oh my God, I don't want to be in this thing, or were you like, oh well?
I was working with Pete and with Adrian, and you know, it was still an adventure to go to. You know, to go to, that's the one we shot in Lithuania, yeah. And so I mean, it was an interesting place to go, and you know, in a way, it's fun. I mean, like you know, you go out in a blaze of glory. So you know, my little scenes were kind of fun. I thought, you know, and but yeah, at the same time, like I say, it was just and you hope for the best, and it was working with people that I loved, you know, like. And so yeah, let's go do it. And, you know, sometimes I mean you can read a script and it's like, but you know the actors take a hold of it, and you know there was just so many people trying to do so much with that. You know, like Bill and their ideas of what they wanted to do, and you know it came off as sort of not there. And then of course David would tell you, well, it was all a dream. None of this actually happened. But
That's what we said.
But I did have a, you know, I made some good friends in Lithuania, and I had a, you know, got into the culture over there and met some people that I, you know, saw some really interesting stuff. And also at the time, you know, they were trying to become part of the European Union, and so there was all this really, you go into a place and there was, you knew that this guy's with the CIA or something. I mean, honest to God, I mean, you would meet these people and you'd have these conversations with them. And you know, oh yeah, I'm in the Air Force or whatever. And then you'd be somewhere else in the country and you'd see this guy again. And yeah, you're in the Air Force, my ass. Because there was really a lot of, you know, it was quite interesting sitting in the bar and these guys from DHL, which is, you know, the German FedEx, right? You know, they're based in Germany and stuff. And how shall I approach it, my customer? You know, and it was just great fun. I mean, I really had a good time surrounding the thing, and it ended up not being so great. I wrote 2 great songs when we were doing that. I wrote Running Out of Time, and I wrote Of Whom Shall I Be Afraid? I wrote both those songs in Lithuania while shooting that film. So good stuff came out of it for me.
Kathy.
I've been following the success of some of the other Canadian musicians that you introduced us to because we came up and watched you at various festivals. Blackie and the Rodeo Kings.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Amos Garrett. Tom Wilson just wrote a biography called Beautiful Scars, and it reminded me that once upon a time you mentioned possibly doing an autobiography.
Oh yeah, well I had, in fact, I had an advance from McClellan Stewart to the publishers in Canada to do a book, and I got this advance money, and then they went bankrupt. And my wife keeps telling me, you know, God, you should write this book, and so I have gotten a lot of stuff on tape, and at some point, at the same time, I mean, I got more life to live. I don't want, I'm still living my biography, okay? And at some point I will put together, and it won't be, it'll be more of a memoir and not an autobiography. You know, some of it will be fake. There's a great book, Charlie Mingus, Charles Mingus, the jazz bass player. He's got a book called Beneath the Underdog, and it's like this, pseudo-biography, and some of it's true, and some of it is not true, but it's so interesting. I mean, it's a great book to, and that's kind of, I think, what in the long run there will be some true memories in there, and there'll be some stuff that's quite Comes from the imagination.
You could always call it session 1 and session 2.
So, yeah.
Anybody else?
Andy?
What was your favorite Highlander episode?
Oh, you know,
It doesn't have to be one that you were in.
they got to be. No, obviously, I mean, there was, Methuselah's Gift, which I was not in, and a few of those, there are a couple that really just stand out. But the show that Pete and our, described, our road trip, we had so much fun doing that. And then, I guess back, all those, a lot of people, diss on the last season, but, the show where we had the deal with Horton, and my legs, and him offering me my, just what I got to dig into during that, and of course, the story that, of my history in Vietnam and all that, those where I really got to do more than just be exposition, where you just, well, this happened, when you really got to those are my favorite ones, where I really got the chance to act my ass off. He's acting his butt off. Which is actually, as an actor, the last thing you want to be, if you get caught out acting, it's bad. When you're watching a movie, oh, this guy's acting. It's supposed to be real. Sure.
There's earlier question about how Spotify is not that great for getting income from. But I also know there's platforms like Patreon or crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, where they have musicians that go on there and get their fans to directly finance EPs or albums. And I've done that where I've donated, did a crowdfunding campaign to support an album getting made. Is that something that you've ever heard?
Well, yeah, we've been lucky. In Canada, there's still it's called the Canada Council. There still is, the government still supports artists like that, which really doesn't happen too much down here, And some, you don't want to be beholden to the government, but there are places to go up in Canada where you to get help for touring, for example. When we go to Europe to tour. I couldn't afford to do that, but you get this money from Canada Council that pays for your travel expenses because you're spreading the word about how there's great art in Canada, right? And so yeah, but it's at some point going to have to. But also, I mean, the thing of recording a CD now is people only really buy singles and stuff anymore. The way it's changed, the business has changed so much. But at some point, I mean, those Kickstarter things are great. To be able to, because you have to be able to support it some way, and everything costs money. So where do you find it? And, we made our money the old-fashioned way. We stole it.
That was the wise guy, right?
Yeah.
My nephew was in a ska band
Oh,
called
yeah.
Let's Go Bowling, and they actually got a gig where they were going to tour Europe.
Uh-huh.
And they got over to London and into the hotel and found out that they couldn't leave the hotel because the visa was wrong. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
wondered if there was anything like that that had happened in your.
Yeah, we went over. We went to Amsterdam to play some shows because of this great friend of mine. He had a bar in Vancouver, and he brought us over. He opened a new place in Amsterdam, his hometown, and we went to play. And meanwhile, I had a friend, a business partner, in fact, in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and we had a bunch of restaurants and bars. But so I was okay, but we thought on the way back from Amsterdam, we'd stop. We'd do some shows in Edinburgh, and before we flew back to Vancouver. And so we got there, and my paperwork was all right, but all the guys in the band, it was anyway, so we
You didn't get to do it.
well, we played one night, but we had all these shows lined up all over the country, but we broke the law by just playing the one night in this one place and then leave the next day. So yeah, that's, you really gotta, read the fine print.
Yeah.
All right, probably got time for one more question.
Mark?
Yeah, yes, sir, I was just curious, a few years ago, I discovered a radio program called The Blues Mobile, Elwood Blues, actually hosted by Dan Aykroyd. And I was curious if you were ever on the program, have you ever jammed with Dan?
Well, you know, there's that show, you know, on Sirius or whatever, and they're down. I have met with Big Lou that does that show down at the Memphis the Blues Awards, which happen every May in Memphis. And we were down. We were up for one, and was down there for that. So, but yeah, I have, you know, been in touch with those guys, but it's there's just. Unless you're down in Memphis dealing with the guys, you're not necessarily the first guy on their list, and you have to remind them that you're there. But, a lot of fun.
All right, thank you.
Good night, nurse. We'll see you later on tonight.